Hello from the Engineering and Public Works Roadshow, coming to you from Winston Salem, North Carolina at the Great Trail State Conference. We've been invited down to interview a number of engineering firms and to look at projects that are really focused on environmental and recreational infrastructure, something that is often not really focused in on, but it's something that our member firms do and the industry does to improve the quality of life for communities all around the country. And of course, North Carolina is a leader in this. It's a Great Trail State official designation, and very pleased to be joined for really our kickoff interview. We're looking at the McIntyre Creek Greenway in Mecklenburg County, and I'm joined by Jennifer Brooks with Mecklenburg County and Jacob Bachman. He is with Bolton and Menk, the firm that did the civil design for the Greenway. Thank you very much for joining us this morning. Really appreciate you coming in, and let's talk about this project. Jennifer, starting off, what was the inspiration on this project? What was the need that the county wanted to address?
What is unique about McIntyre Creek Greenway and about Mecklenburg County's Greenway program is that it's really been in the works for over 20 years. The Greenway Master Plan that mapped McIntyre Creek Greenway was approved in 1999. And many great minds have gone into the thinking and planning towards the final project that we see completed today.
Yeah.
McIntyre Creek Greenway was also part of an initiative in 2019, supported by the county's Board of County Commissioners, to fund accelerated Greenway projects, which meant that they gave us a bunch of funding, I think around $30 million, and said, build 15 miles of Greenway in the next 5 years. One of the strategies that Mecklenburg County Park and Recreation came up with was to look at projects that were planned on land that they already owned. Mm-hmm. And so McIntyre Creek Greenway is one of those. It's in an active park, Hornets Nest Park. It's a legacy park, really important to the county. It is accessed from Beatty's Ford Road via vehicular access. In addition to this Greenway making a key connection to a regional trail in the future, it's also connecting underserved neighborhoods to the park.
Okay, so really it's both addressing an immediate need, but then also future expansion into the larger Greenway system. That's so, Jacob, from the firm's perspective, from your perspective, how did you approach the project? Were there any specific challenges or things that you needed to address in designing this?
I think one of the big things approaching the project from the beginning was like Jennifer said, looking at the land we already have, right? Mm-hmm. Looking at all the facilities that are in the existing park. The park has 4 baseball fields, disc golf, BMX, fishing, all sorts of stuff. So really working with those stakeholders to make sure the park operations are still operating the way they should, but actually enhancing the park. One of the other things is looking at the environmental constraints. Yes. We have a conservation easement that we're crossing, which is it's a 15-person, I think, board through the interagency review team. So that's the Corps, Fish and Wildlife, North Carolina DEQ, et cetera. So really kind of starting with an inventory in mind and planning that out from the beginning. So.
One of the things that I think gets lost in the shuffle when we talk about specifics about engineering, we talk about the technical aspects of a design, the actual design innovations that might go into the physical part of it. People lose sight of the stakeholder engagement that has to happen on a project like this, especially something that is going to be addressing multiple communities. As an engineer, how did you kind of address those and making sure that those stakeholders, their needs were satisfied, that they were brought on, and the community understood what the project meant?
Well, I think it's bringing everybody to the table early, right? Like hearing their wants, needs, concerns sometimes. Working with, taking disc golf, for instance, I think working with disc golf is something that we really hadn't done in the past. It's a pretty unique sport with a lot of unique requirements. It also doesn't necessarily cohabitate well with some other recreation or transportation, as greenways are as well. So bringing everybody to the table early and making sure that before you really start anything beyond just putting a line on a paper, you've got everybody's wants, needs, concerns, and you're not leaving somebody out, right?
So, and Jennifer, I want to also bring this up because it's something that you mentioned early on. It's that connecting communities.
That's right.
You know, one of the things that good design does is it connects people, and especially underserved communities. So, how does this project connect underserved communities within the county?
Well, it's interesting because the creek, which is a significant environmental feature of the park, and aligns with the Greenway corridor, actually divides the park access from the neighborhoods to the west.
Okay.
And then on the east, there's a roadway corridor, Beatty's Ford Road, that divides neighborhoods from the east.
A nice north south,
Exactly.
but nothing on the east west.
And so this Greenway is really making this essential east-west connection across a roadway corridor and an ecological corridor that are really essential to bring people, provide access, and really serve people that had, whose communities had otherwise been marginalized by these conditions.
So that's really important, and then also dealing with, again, the stakeholder engagement, and I guess one of the things we were talking about before we went on was kind of that interesting thing where it's that I don't know if let's say conflict, but maybe the misunderstanding between recreation and conservation, right? It's the idea that recreation can be seen as like a first step to conservation, right? You have to actually experience the environment to appreciate it, to want to conserve it. I mean, how did you juggle those interests in getting this project done, since you did have the easement, since you had a lot of different stakeholders involved with this, to kind of bridge that gap?
That's a good question. As far as, first off, I think it's specifically in like an urban watershed, right, where a lot of residents maybe don't have the access to the natural environment. This is maybe more important than ever in urban situations. So, how do you balance that? I think from a planning and design perspective, again, bringing in people pretty early, like working with DMS mitigation services with NCDEQ pretty early to define what they would allow, right? And then what our goals were. Yeah. And then figuring out ways that we can mitigate any impact to the environmental features, but at the end enhance the feature, right? Yeah. So as part of the project and as part of their approval process to allow us to cross, we actually did a pretty decent amount of enhancement to the stream corridor, right? Planning things out in advance with DMS. So as far as how you balance it,
I think it's seeing the regulating agencies as a partner and finding where you have alignment in your goals. Yeah. It was unique in Hornets Nest Park and on McIntyre Creek Greenway that we had a conservation easement. And so that really is what brought...
But no, that's it. I was wondering when I saw that guy coming around the corner, I was like, is that... Yes. All right, so... Back up. How far back do you want us to go back?
To the top of your...
Okay.
All right. Yeah.
Okay.
We'll try to get a clean cut.
Okay.
So, yeah, you can just restart.
Okay. This is a really, well, I'm sorry. I think that you said something and I said, I think it's
defining everybody's goals.
Yes.
So we can start with, we can start right there.
Right. I think that it's finding where you have alignment in your goals. What is unique at McIntyre Creek Greenway and in Hornets Nest Park is that there's a conservation easement on the creek. Yeah. And that's what brought us to the table with the DEQ and the Army Corps, the IRT group, in terms of understanding how to really create an immersive landscape experience for the trail user while also enhancing, mitigating any impacts and enhancing the ecological condition of the creek. Yeah. But it's not unique to our system that we are along a creek. The whole Greenway system is based on a watershed strategy. All of our trails run north-south along creeks. And so broadly, we're approaching these trails has these surgical, careful incisions within a riparian corridor.
Yeah.
And so conservation is always at the forefront of our minds, and also providing a way to expose the community to the unique landscape of the Piedmont in Mecklenburg County.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's the big thing. Like to your point, also, Jacob, is the idea of, you're especially with urban areas who, different areas geographically that might not have access to nature, to, really the great outdoors, beautiful areas, that having that access actually opens up a lot of opportunity and helps break down those barriers for really, it comes down to the engineering and social equity and those issues. So it's really important.
Yeah, very much so. I mean, if you don't fully understand something, how can you make a difference in the future?
Yeah.
Right.
So, one of the things that we like to do with the Roadshow is also try to talk to the future engineers and public works people, the people at the county level who are actually making sure that the greenways are kept up and that they're maintained, and of course from the engineers who are actually, designing and helping, lay out the future. What would you say, Jennifer, to anyone out there who's looking at a career in that area, why it would be a great place to be, really, as far as a career path?
I was inspired to work in landscape architecture because I wanted to make the world a better place, and trails are unique in all of the things that they touch. I mean, that geographically they are corridors, and so you're passing through all different types of landscapes, you're connecting parts of a community that might otherwise be disconnected. You're also, because you're working in these sensitive environments, you're able to look at ecological enhancement and restoration opportunities. I think that you're an advocate.
Yeah.
You're an advocate for the environment, and you're an advocate for your community when you're working in trails. And it's also just exciting to be able to do the planning work and kind of look at a large scale, kind of 30,000 foot view, and then also be on the ground and be making like really site specific design decisions about, implementing the project, at the human scale.
Yeah. And Jacob, you mentioned before we went on that you started in landscape architecture, and you actually got into civil work. So what's your perspective on that for people who might be looking at engineering, and then also what does it mean to kind of have this kind of lasting design, right? This is something that people are going to be using for years to come.
Well, I mean, I think that's kind of the most exciting part. I mean, Greenway projects are really rewarding, I think, from the start to the finish, from planning through construction. That we make impact communities, and communities live with them for 50, 60, 100 years, right? And there's good ways to do it and there's bad ways to do it. And as designers, we always, I think, want to see our impact on the community and the environment. And greenways are a really tangible way to see that, right? It's not, if you're not designing, water, wastewater, storm sewer, you're designing something that you can see the impact and the benefit to really the community that we live in, and that's the most important thing.
Fantastic. Well, thank you again for taking time out of the morning and joining us here. Again, this is Jennifer Brooks and Jacob Bachman. They were both project managers on the McIntyre Creek Greenway in Mecklenburg County, North Carolina, and this has been the Engineering and Public Works Roadshow from the Great Trail State Conference in Winston Salem, North Carolina. We'll see you next time.